My name is Bella, and I'm 28 years old, standing here in a $5,000 gown at the Waldorf Astoria Charity Gala when my mother loudly announces to wealthy guests that I'm just here to help serve. The champagne glass trembles in my hand as billionaire tech mogul Sebastian Chase interrupts her mid-sentence, his eyes widening in recognition. Bella, the CEO of Neural Sync AI. He turns to my family with genuine confusion. The one who just closed a $50 million venture capital deal. My mother's face drains of color as 3 years of secrets begin to unravel. Before we dive into how I went from being treated like a servant to becoming a tech industry leader, I want to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's ever felt underestimated by your own family? Hit that like button if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should have believed in you from the start. And please subscribe to hear more stories about triumph over family betrayal. Now let me take you back to where this incredible journey began, when I was nothing more than an invisible ghost in my own home. 3 years before that glamorous gala moment, I was drowning in responsibility while my family treated me like hired help. Our father had passed away suddenly from a heart attack, leaving behind a mountain of debt and a family that expected me to fix everything. While I worked 2 jobs, one at a call center during the day and another stocking shelves at night, my mother coddled my younger sister Becky and older brother Clifford like they were made of glass. Becky was 24, then spending her days taking selfies and calling herself an aspiring influencer, despite having only 800 followers. Clifford, 31, had failed at 5 different business ventures, but somehow still walked around with the confidence of a Fortune 500 CEO. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5 to prepare breakfast for everyone before my first shift. The kitchen would smell like coffee and scrambled eggs while Becky complained about the Wi-Fi speed affecting her Instagram stories. Clifford would stroll in around 9, critique my cooking, then disappear into his room to work on his latest million-dollar idea that never materialized. My mother would pat his shoulder and tell him he was destined for greatness while asking me to remember to pick up his dry cleaning after work. Bella handles all the household things, she'd tell anyone who'd listen. She's so good at taking care of us. It's really what she's best at. I paid rent on our 3-bedroom townhouse, covered all utilities, bought groceries, and even gave Becky money for her makeup hauls that she claimed were business expenses. My paychecks disappeared faster than I could earn them, but any complaint was met with accusations of selfishness. Family takes care of family, my mother would say conveniently, forgetting that the care only flowed in one direction. Late at night, after finishing my second job and completing all the household chores, I'd huddle in my tiny room with my laptop taking online coding courses. The blue light from the screen was my only companion as I taught myself Python, Java, and machine learning basics. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but something deep inside pushed me forward. The first major betrayal came 6 months into this arrangement when I discovered my emergency fund had been drained. $5,000 I'd scraped together by skipping lunches and walking instead of taking the bus gone. The bank statement showed ATM withdrawals, and when I checked the security footage through our online banking, there was Clifford making withdrawal after withdrawal. When I confronted him, he laughed in my face. "Consider it an investment in the family's future," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "My cryptocurrency opportunity is going to make us millionaires. You should be thanking me for taking the initiative." My mother's response cut even deeper than the theft itself. "How dare you accuse your brother of stealing?" she screamed when I showed her the evidence. "He's trying to better our situation while you selfishly hoard money. What kind of sister are you after everything we've done for you, giving you a purpose, a family to care for, and this is how you repay us?" I stood there speechless, realizing that in their eyes, I wasn't a daughter or sister. I was just a resource to be exploited, a convenience they'd grown accustomed to. The breaking point came 2 months later during Becky's 25th birthday party. She'd planned an elaborate celebration that I was expected to fund and execute. I'd worked 16 days straight to afford her designer cake and decorations, but that morning, I finally had a job interview at a tech startup. It was my chance to escape retail and use the coding skills I'd been developing. As I dressed in my only professional outfit, Becky burst into my room. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded. "The party planner just canceled. You need to set everything up. My friends will be here in 3 hours. When I explained about the interview, she ran crying to our mother, who forbade me from leaving. "Your sister's happiness comes first," she said. "There will be other interviews. There won't be another 25th birthday." I missed the interview. I spent the day arranging flowers, hanging streamers, and serving food to Becky's friends who ignored me completely. That night, as they laughed and celebrated, I made my decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. When I announced I was moving out, the reaction was explosive. Clifford called me an ungrateful brat. Becky posted on social media about being abandoned by family. My mother cried and wailed about how I was destroying our family, how I was selfish, and would regret turning my back on blood. "You'll come crawling back," she promised. "You're nothing without us." Who else would want someone who abandons their own mother? I found a tiny studio apartment in a rough part of town, just 400 square feet, with a leaky faucet and thin walls. But it was mine. The first night I sat on the floor eating instant noodles and felt more at peace than I had in years. I'd managed to land a job at a small tech startup through a connection from my online courses. The pay was modest, but it was a foot in the door. During the day, I threw myself into learning everything I could about product development and coding. At night, I took on freelance projects, building websites, and debugging code for extra income. My family's attempts to contact me ranged from guilt trips to outright threats, but I changed my number and focused on my future. The silence was golden, and in that silence, I began to discover who Bella really was when she wasn't defined by others' expectations. 6 months into my new life, everything started clicking into place. My dedication at the startup hadn't gone unnoticed, and my manager, Jennifer, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Bella, you've exceeded every expectation," she said, sliding a promotion letter across her desk. "Product manager effective immediately with a 40% salary increase." I nearly cried right there in her office. For the first time in my life, someone recognized my worth based on my abilities, not what I could do for them. The promotion meant I could afford a better apartment and finally stop living paycheck to paycheck. More importantly, it gave me access to resources and mentorship that would prove invaluable. My nights became consumed with a passion project that had been brewing in my mind since my coding bootcamp days. Using my access to the company's development tools and cloud services, I started building an AI algorithm that could predict user behavior patterns in real time and adapt interfaces accordingly. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious for someone who'd been coding seriously for less than 2 years, but every small breakthrough fueled my determination. My fingertips flew across the keyboard as lines of code transformed into something revolutionary. The algorithm learned and evolved, becoming more sophisticated with each iteration. 3 months into my new role, I made the mistake of sharing my success with my family during a moment of weakness. Maybe it was the lingering hope that they'd finally be proud of me, or perhaps I just wanted them to know I'd succeeded without them. I unblocked my mother's number and sent a simple text about my promotion. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages. Suddenly, the family that had called me selfish and ungrateful was interested in my life again. Clifford texted congratulations, followed immediately by a business proposal. Becky wanted to visit my office to network. My mother called repeatedly, leaving voicemails about how proud she'd always been of her ambitious daughter. Becky showed up at my office, unannounced, the following week, dressed in what she probably thought was professional attire, but looked more like a cocktail dress. Reception called up, and I reluctantly agreed to let her in, hoping a brief visit would satisfy her curiosity. The moment she entered our open-plan office, she transformed into someone I didn't recognize. Her voice pitched higher, her laugh became tinkling and false. She zeroed in on Daniel, my mentor, and a potential investor in my AI project like a heat-seeking missile. "Oh, you must be so important," she gushed, touching his arm. "Bella never tells us anything about her amazing colleagues. I'm her sister, basically her best friend." The second betrayal began unfolding on her Instagram that evening. She'd taken photos throughout the office without permission and posted a series of stories mocking the tech industry. "Day in the life of visiting my nerdy sister," one caption read over a video of developers working. "These people need to discover sunlight and social skills." Another showed my desk with the caption, "Where dreams go to die in corporate slavery." The worst was a photo of me concentrating on code with the text, "My sister pretends this is changing the world. Cute delusion." By morning, several colleagues had seen the posts and showed them to me with uncomfortable expressions. Just when I thought the situation couldn't deteriorate further, Clifford appeared at our building's lobby the next week. Security called up and I found him downstairs in an ill-fitting suit, holding a briefcase that looked fresh from a thrift store. "Baby sister," he greeted me with false warmth. "I have a business proposition that will make us both rich. I just need a small investment of $20,000 to get started." When I refused explaining, I didn't have that kind of money to spare. His facade cracked. "You owe us," he hissed. "Do you know how much Mom spent raising you? How much we sacrificed? This promotion is thanks to the work ethic we instilled in you." The family group chat, which I'd muted but not left, became a cesspool of accusations and guilt trips. My mother led the charge, crafting elaborate messages about how I'd abandoned them in their time of need. "Your father would be so disappointed," she wrote. "He always said family comes first. Now you're out there pretending we don't exist while we struggle." Becky chimed in with stories of my supposed cruelty, painting herself as a victim of my success. Clifford added financial calculations of what I owed them for 18 years of raising me, as if love came with an invoice. They threatened to contact our extended family to tell cousins and aunts and uncles how I'd turned my back on my own mother. The third betrayal cut the deepest because it attacked my professional reputation directly. 2 weeks after Clifford's visit, my boss Jennifer called me into her office with a concerned expression. "Bella, I need to ask you something uncomfortable," she began. "We had a young woman claiming to be your sister contact several team members on LinkedIn. She's been telling people you're mentally unstable and that your family is worried about you working in such a high-stress environment." My heart sank as Jennifer continued. "She mentioned something about you having breakdowns and needing constant supervision at home. Now I know you well enough to recognize this as nonsense, but I needed to make you aware. Becky had systematically reached out to my colleagues, spinning tales of my supposed mental health issues and instability. She'd portrayed herself as a concerned sister, trying to protect me from a breakdown while suggesting that I'd stolen ideas from family members for my work projects. The damage to my reputation was subtle but insidious. People began treating me differently, watching me for signs of the instability Becky had described. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Meeting invitations decreased. My carefully built professional image was crumbling because of lies from someone who shared my blood. Instead of letting their sabotage destroy me, I channeled my anger into productivity. I worked harder than ever, arriving first and leaving last, ensuring my output was beyond reproach. My AI prototype progressed rapidly, fueled by a determination to prove everyone wrong. When the company announced an internal innovation contest, with the winner getting funding and resources to develop their project, I entered without hesitation. The presentation preparation consumed my weekends, but I refined every slide, every code demonstration, every projection until it was perfect. The day of the contest, I stood before the company's leadership and unveiled my AI algorithm. I demonstrated how it could revolutionize user experience across multiple platforms, showed the potential market value, and presented a clear development roadmap. My voice remained steady, despite knowing my colleagues might be judging me through the lens of Becky's lies. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. The CEO himself stood up, his eyes bright with interest. "This is exactly the kind of innovation we need," he announced. I won not just the contest, but the attention of several board members who saw potential beyond our small startup. As I accepted the award, I thought about my family's attempts to diminish me and felt nothing but pity for their small-mindedness. The innovation contest victory opened doors I'd only dreamed about. Within days, I received an invitation to present at Tech Forward, one of the industry's premier conferences. 3,000 attendees, including venture capitalists, industry leaders, and tech journalists, would gather in San Francisco to see the latest innovations. My presentation slot was prime time right after lunch on the main stage. This was my chance to take my AI algorithm from a promising prototype to a funded reality. I spent weeks refining my presentation, practicing in front of mirrors, and preparing for every possible question. I made another mistake in a moment of excitement and hope for family reconciliation. I called my mother to share the news, thinking perhaps this achievement might finally earn their respect. Her initial reaction seemed positive. "Oh, Bella, that's wonderful," she cooed over the phone. "You know Clifford has been working on something similar. He's been studying AI in his spare time. Maybe he could come as your assistant. It would be so good for him to learn from your success." Against my better judgment, worn down by her persistent calls and promises that he'd changed, I agreed to bring Clifford as my +1 to the conference. Clifford arrived at my apartment the night before we flew out, carrying a shabby suitcase and wearing his perpetual smirk. "Looking forward to learning from my successful little sister," he said, though his tone suggested anything but humility. During the flight, he peppered me with questions about my algorithm, my potential investors, and my business strategy. I answered vaguely, but he pressed for more details, claiming he needed to understand to better support me. "Family helps family," he reminded me, echoing our mother's manipulation. "I just want to make sure I can speak intelligently if anyone asks me about your work." The conference venue buzzed with energy and innovation. Tech displays lined the halls, and everywhere I looked, people were networking, demonstrating products, and making deals that would shape the industry's future. I should have noticed the warning signs when Clifford immediately began collecting business cards and introducing himself to everyone we met. He had printed his own cards overnight, listing himself as AI strategy consultant with my company's name underneath. When I confronted him, he laughed it off. Just networking, sis. This is how business works. You focus on your little presentation, and I'll handle the relationship building. Throughout the first day, I caught glimpses of Clifford inserting himself into conversations with investors and industry leaders. He name-dropped me constantly, but always with a twist. My sister Bella is presenting tomorrow, I heard him tell a group of venture capitalists. She's the face of our project, you know. Great at presentations, while I handle the technical architecture behind the scenes. My blood ran cold, but I couldn't confront him without causing a scene that would damage my professional image further. I focused on my presentation, running through it one more time in my hotel room while Clifford attended the evening networking reception. The fourth betrayal revealed itself the next morning when I overheard Clifford in the hotel lobby. He was deep in conversation with Thomas Chen from Apex Ventures, one of the investors I'd specifically hoped to connect with. The truth is, Clifford was saying, Bella's great at coding, but she lacks vision. I've been guiding the project from the beginning. She's more of an implementer of my ideas. He pulled out his phone, showing what looked like fabricated email threads and documents. See, here's our early collaboration. I conceived the core algorithm architecture. Bella's contribution has been mainly in the presentation layer, making it look pretty. My hands trembled with rage as I heard him systematically undermining my work and credibility. Thomas Chen nodded politely but looked skeptical. When Clifford finally walked away, I approached Thomas and introduced myself properly. His expression shifted from polite interest to confusion. Your brother has interesting perspectives on your partnership, he said carefully. I maintained my professionalism, despite wanting to scream. Mr. Chen, I developed this algorithm independently. My brother has no technical background and no involvement in this project. I apologize for any confusion he may have caused. Thomas's expression softened slightly, but I could see the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. My presentation slot arrived, and I walked onto the main stage, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. The auditorium was packed, faces tilted up expectantly. I began speaking, my voice clear and confident, walking through the AI algorithm's capabilities and potential applications. On the massive screens behind me, code scrolled past, demonstrations played out, and financial projections appeared. The audience leaned forward, engaged and interested. Questions came fast during the Q&A session, but I fielded each one with expertise born from countless hours of development and refinement. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Backstage, investors and tech leaders crowded around with business cards and partnership proposals. I was riding high on adrenaline and success when Clifford appeared at my elbow, inserting himself into every conversation. As Bella's strategic partner, he kept saying, despite my attempts to correct him. The culmination came when he cornered Miranda Walsh from Tech Venture Capital and began pitching himself as an essential part of any investment deal. Bella's brilliant at execution, he said loudly enough for others to hear. But you'll want someone with business acumen involved. I've been mentoring her through this process. The looks of confusion and concern on potential investors' faces made my stomach sink. That evening, I discovered Clifford had attempted to access my laptop while I was presenting. The hotel security footage, which I requested after noticing my room key had been used during my stage time, showed him entering my room and trying various passwords on my computer. He'd failed to get in, but the violation of trust was complete. When I confronted him, he exploded in rage. You owe me this opportunity, he shouted in the hotel hallway. I'm your brother. Your success is my success. Stop being so selfish and share what you've built. When I threatened to call security, he switched to public manipulation, raising his voice about how I was having another one of my episodes, how the pressure was getting to me, how our family was right to be concerned about my mental stability. Despite his sabotage, my presentation had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. Over the next 2 days, I received serious interest from multiple venture capital firms. 3 wanted to schedule follow-up meetings, and 1 was ready to start due diligence immediately. I spent my remaining time at the conference in productive meetings while avoiding Clifford, who continued his networking charade. On our flight home, he acted as if nothing had happened, chattering about all the connections he'd made and how we'd soon be rich. I remained silent, planning my next moves. The moment we landed, I sent him a message stating he was never to contact me or claim association with my work again. His response was predictable: threats, guilt trips, and promises to ruin me. Back home, I quietly incorporated my own company, NeuralSync AI, keeping all details private. I hired a lawyer to draft cease and desist letters and began the process of protecting my intellectual property. The family group chat exploded with celebrations of Clifford's networking success at the conference, with my mother praising his business acumen and Becky asking when the money would start rolling in. Not one person asked about my actual presentation or acknowledged that it was my work that had opened these doors. In their narrative, I was still just the vehicle for their success, a tool to be used rather than a person to be celebrated. But I didn't need their recognition anymore. I had something far more valuable, the interest of serious investors and a future I was building entirely on my own terms. The call came on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. "Bella, this is Miranda Walsh from Tech Venture Capital," the voice on the other end said. "We've completed our due diligence and we're prepared to offer you $2 million in seed funding for NeuralSync AI. I had to sit down my legs, suddenly unable to support me. $2 million, enough to hire a team, rent proper office space, and turn my prototype into a market-ready product. We scheduled the paperwork signing for the following week, and I immediately began planning my company's future. I found a small office space in the tech district, put deposits down, and started reaching out to talented developers I'd met through the conference. My family's radar for money was apparently finely tuned because within days of signing the funding agreement, they somehow discovered my success. I suspected Clifford had maintained contact with people from the conference who'd seen the funding announcement on tech blogs. My mother appeared at my new office on a Wednesday afternoon, dressed in black and looking haggard. The receptionist I just hired looked concerned as she escorted her in. "Bella, darling," my mother began, clutching a tissue. "I didn't want to worry you, but I've been diagnosed with a serious condition. The medical bills are astronomical. I need $30,000 for treatment, or I don't know what will happen to me." The performance was Oscar-worthy. She described symptoms, mentioned specific doctors, and even produced what looked like medical paperwork. But something felt off. The papers looked too pristine, the letterhead slightly blurry. I asked for time to think and contacted the hospital she'd mentioned. After some careful questioning, they confirmed they had no record of her as a patient. When I confronted her with this information, her facade crumbled instantly. "Fine," she screamed. "But Becky needs money for her influencer marketing campaign. She's so close to making it big. This is an investment in your sister's future. Don't you care about family at all?" The fifth betrayal came in the form of a coordinated social media assault. Becky had apparently invested in a professional camera and editing software because her TikTok production quality suddenly skyrocketed. She launched a series called Rich Sister Poor Family, where she painted herself as a struggling artist whose wealthy tech executive sister refused to help. The videos were carefully crafted to generate sympathy and outrage. In one, she stood outside my office building, tears streaming down her face. "This is where my sister works," she said to the camera. "She just got millions in funding, but won't even help her family pay rent. I'm about to be evicted while she drives a Tesla." The video went viral in my local area, racking up hundreds of thousands of views. The series escalated with each episode. She shared childhood photos with captions about how I'd always been selfish, even as a child. She filmed herself at food banks, implying she couldn't afford groceries because of my cruelty. The comments section filled with people calling me heartless evil, a disgrace to family values. Some viewers found my company's social media pages and flooded them with negative comments. "How can you trust a CEO who abandons her own family?" One commenter wrote. "If she treats her blood relatives this way, imagine how she'll treat employees and customers." My marketing manager had to work overtime managing the crisis. The sixth betrayal nearly destroyed everything I'd built. I received a call from my lead investor, Miranda, her voice tense with concern. "Bella, we need to discuss some serious allegations that have been brought to our attention," she said. "A man claiming to be your brother has contacted our entire board with evidence that you stole proprietary technology from him. He's provided documents showing early collaboration and is threatening legal action unless we renegotiate the investment terms to include him." My blood ran cold. Clifford had escalated from manipulation to outright fraud. The documents he'd provided were sophisticated forgeries. He'd created fake email threads dated months before I'd even started coding fake collaboration agreements with forged signatures, and even a fraudulent patent application listing himself as the primary inventor. My lawyer, thank goodness, was able to quickly identify multiple inconsistencies in his claims. The metadata on his documents showed recent creation dates, the email headers were fabricated, and his patent application contained technical errors no actual developer would make. But the damage to my reputation with investors was severe. They stood by me, but I could sense their wariness. Every interaction now carried an undercurrent of doubt about what other surprises my family might spring. Becky and Clifford's final coordinated attack came at 2 in the morning on a Thursday. I woke to pounding on my apartment door and voices shouting in the hallway. Through the peephole, I could see my entire family, including some cousins and aunts I hadn't spoken to in years. They were drunk, belligerent, and determined to confront me. "Open up, you selfish witch," Clifford screamed. "We know you're in there counting your money while your family suffers." Becky was live streaming the entire event, narrating to her followers about coming to make one last plea to her heartless sister. My neighbors began opening their doors, concerned and annoyed by the disturbance. My mother wailed dramatically about being abandoned while Clifford kicked at my door. The situation escalated until Mrs. Chen from across the hall called the police. As sirens approached, my family's bravado crumbled. But before leaving, my mother delivered her final blow, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll always be nothing but our servant Bella. No matter how much money you make, you'll never be more than the maid who got lucky. We made you who you are, and we can destroy you just as easily." The police took statements from everyone, and I had to file a restraining order against my family members. The next day, exhausted and emotionally drained, I sat in my office wondering if success was worth this price. My team looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and concern. One developer had already submitted his resignation, citing the drama as too much of a distraction. Clients were asking questions about the negative publicity. Everything I'd worked for seemed to be crumbling because of the very people who should have been my biggest supporters. But as I looked at the code on my screen at the algorithm that could truly help people I knew I couldn't give up, I wouldn't let them win. The weeks following the apartment incident were the darkest of my professional life. 2 major clients pulled out of pilot programs, citing concerns about company stability and leadership issues. "We can't risk partnering with a firm that has this level of personal drama affecting operations." One executive told me bluntly during a termination call. The loss of their contracts meant a significant hit to our projected revenue, putting pressure on our burn rate just as we were scaling up. My CFO presented the numbers during our Monday morning meeting, and they were sobering. We had 8 months of runway left if we couldn't secure new clients quickly. Team morale plummeted as the negative publicity continued to swirl. Becky's TikTok videos had evolved into a full media narrative, with local news outlets picking up the story of the tech CEO who abandoned her struggling family. They used photos from my conference presentation, juxtaposed with Becky's tears, creating a compelling but false narrative. During our daily stand-up meetings, I could see the doubt in my employees' eyes. Were they working for a heartless person? Would the company survive this scandal? The developer who'd submitted his resignation left at the end of the week, and 2 others requested meetings to discuss their futures with the company. The 7th betrayal came disguised as professional concern when I discovered Becky had hired a legitimate PR firm to orchestrate a campaign against me. The firm, unaware they were spreading lies, had crafted a sophisticated media strategy. Articles began appearing on medium-sized tech blogs questioning my mental fitness for leadership. Sources close to NeuralSync AI's CEO report erratic behavior and emotional instability, one piece claimed. Another featured an interview with an anonymous former colleague who detailed supposed breakdowns and strange behavior that had never occurred. The anonymous source's talking points matched Becky's narratives perfectly, but proving the connection was impossible. An emergency board meeting was called on a Thursday afternoon. I sat at the conference table facing investors who'd once looked at me with excitement and now regarded me with concern. "Bella." Miranda Walsh began carefully. "We need to address the elephant in the room. The negative publicity is affecting our investment's potential. Other portfolio companies are expressing concern about association with NeuralSync." Another board member pulled up social media metrics showing the viral spread of negative content about me personally and the company by extension. They wanted to discuss bringing in a crisis management firm and potentially installing a temporary CEO while things cooled down. I fought for my company with everything I had. I presented our technical progress, showed them the algorithm's latest iterations that had exceeded all benchmarks, and demonstrated the interest we'd received from Microsoft's innovation lab. "The technology is solid," I insisted. "The market need is real. Don't let manufactured drama overshadow what we're building here." I could see some board members wavering, but others remained skeptical. The discussion went in circles until James Chen, who'd been silent throughout, finally spoke up. "I've watched this unfold," he said slowly, "and I've done my own investigation into these claims. What's happening to Bella is a coordinated attack by family members motivated by greed." James revealed that he'd hired a private investigator to verify the claims being made about me. The investigator had uncovered Becky's payments to the PR firm, Clifford's history of failed schemes and fraud attempts, and evidence that my mother had been spreading lies to extended family for months. "This isn't about Bella's leadership," James continued. This is about a successful woman being sabotaged by toxic relatives. I've seen this pattern before in my own life. He shared his story of cutting off manipulative family members who'd tried to destroy his first company out of jealousy and entitlement. His words shifted the room's energy, and slowly other board members began nodding. Success is the best revenge, James told me after the meeting. Focus on building something undeniable. The truth always surfaces eventually. With his support, the board agreed to maintain confidence in my leadership while implementing some protective measures. We hired a professional crisis management team to counter the negative narratives and implemented stricter social media monitoring. But more importantly, I doubled down on product development. If I couldn't control the noise around me, I could control the quality of what we were building. I moved into the office temporarily, coding through the night, refining features, and pushing my team to excellence despite the chaos. A breakthrough came when our algorithm achieved something unprecedented during testing. It successfully predicted and prevented a major security breach in our test environment by identifying suspicious user patterns that traditional security measures missed. The implications were staggering. We weren't just improving user experience, we were creating technology that could revolutionize cybersecurity. I immediately compiled the test results and reached out to contacts at major tech companies. Microsoft's Innovation Lab responded within hours, expressing serious interest in a deeper partnership or potential acquisition. Meanwhile, Clifford made his most desperate move yet. My lawyer called with news that he'd filed a formal lawsuit claiming intellectual property theft and demanding 50% ownership of Neuralink. The lawsuit was baseless but would require time and money to fight. However, my legal team had been prepared. They'd documented every interaction, preserved all evidence of his lack of technical knowledge, and were ready to file an immediate countersuit for fraud, defamation, and attempted extortion. When Clifford's bargain basement lawyer saw our response filing and the mountain of evidence against his client, including the forged documents and security footage from the hotel, he quickly advised Clifford to withdraw the suit. The turning point came during a product demonstration for Microsoft's senior innovation team. Despite everything happening in my personal life, the algorithm performed flawlessly. It adapted to user behaviors in real time, prevented 3 simulated security threats, and improved system efficiency by 42%. The Microsoft team was visibly impressed. This is exactly the kind of innovation we're looking for, their VP of Strategic Partnership said. Let's discuss acquisition possibilities. The number they mentioned made my board's concerns about negative publicity evaporate instantly. $180 million, with earnouts that could push it even higher. As negotiations began with Microsoft, something interesting happened to the negative publicity. The crisis management team's efforts started working, but more importantly, the tech community began rallying around me. Other founders shared their own stories of family sabotage and toxic relationships. A prominent tech journalist investigated Becky's claims and published an exposé showing the coordinated nature of the attacks and the forgeries Clifford had created. The narrative shifted from heartless CEO abandons family to successful female founder targeted by jealous relatives. Becky's follower count plummeted as people realized they'd been manipulated. The PR firm dropped her as a client and issued an apology for their unwitting participation in the harassment campaign. The Microsoft deal negotiations consumed the next 2 months of my life, but in the best possible way. Their due diligence team combed through every line of code, every financial projection, every strategic decision we'd made. Unlike the character assassinations from my family, the scrutiny focused on facts and merit. The algorithm impressed them more with each test, especially when we demonstrated its applications beyond the initial scope. During one session, it identified and prevented a 0-day vulnerability in their test environment that their own security tools had missed. The room fell silent, then erupted in excited discussion. The acquisition offer increased to $180 million with additional earnouts based on performance milestones. I negotiated fiercely for my team, ensuring everyone who'd stuck with me through the chaos would benefit from the acquisition. Key developers received retention bonuses. Early employees got acceleration of their equity vesting, and I secured commitments that Neuralink would maintain its identity as a distinct innovation lab within Microsoft. Most importantly, I retained my position as CEO of the division, reporting directly to their chief technology officer. The faith my remaining team had shown in me during our darkest moments would be rewarded. When I announced the deal terms at our all-hands meeting, several people cried. We'd gone from near collapse to life-changing success in less than 6 months. The news broke in TechCrunch on a Monday morning. Microsoft acquires AI startup Neuralink for $180 million, founder Bella Martinez to lead new innovation division. My phone exploded with congratulations from industry peers, former colleagues, and investors. But mixed among the celebrations were familiar numbers I'd blocked long ago. My mother left 17 voicemails in 3 hours. The first few attempted to sound casual and congratulatory. By the 10th, she was crying about how proud she'd always been. The final ones contained barely veiled demands to discuss my responsibility to family. I deleted them all without listening to the end. Becky's attempts at contact were even more pathetic. Her Instagram stories suddenly featured throwback photos of us as children with captions about sisterly love and family bonds. She posted a lengthy caption about how she'd always believed in my success and how our little disagreements had been blown out of proportion. The comments section roasted her mercilessly. People posted screenshots of her viral videos attacking me, creating side-by-side comparisons with her new narrative. One commenter summed it up perfectly. The audacity of trying to rewrite history when the internet receipts exist is astronomical. Her influencer career built on lies about me crumbled as brands distanced themselves from the controversy. Clifford's approach was characteristically transactional. He sent a formal business proposal to my company email, offering his services as a strategic advisor for a mere 2% equity stake. The proposal was riddled with buzzwords and grammatical errors clearly cobbled together from templates he'd found online. He listed his experience as including our conference attendance and his extensive network in the tech industry. When that received no response, he tried emotional manipulation, sending a long email about how he'd always been preparing me for success through his tough love and how my achievements were partly thanks to his influence. The delusion was staggering. My legal team added it to our harassment documentation file. The industry recognition that followed the Microsoft deal was deeply validating. I was invited to speak at major conferences, not as a promising startup founder, but as a successful entrepreneur with proven results. Tech publications featured profiles about my journey, though I carefully kept family details vague, focusing instead on the technical innovations and team building. Forbes included me in their 30 under 30 list for enterprise technology. Each accolade felt like another brick in the wall I'd built between my professional success and my toxic origins. I'd become someone beyond their reach or influence. A charity gala invitation arrived for the annual Waldorf Astoria Tech Innovation Awards. I was nominated for Young CEO of the Year alongside founders of several other successful startups. This wasn't just another industry event. It was the kind of exclusive gathering where deals were made and legacies were acknowledged. I decided to attend solo, purchasing a stunning $5,000 gown that made me feel like the executive I'd become. As I prepared for the event, I thought about how far I'd come from that girl making breakfast for ungrateful relatives at dawn. The transformation wasn't just external. I'd rebuilt myself from the inside out. The red carpet experience was surreal. Photographers called my name, asking me to pose and smile. Tech journalists asked for quick interviews about the Microsoft acquisition and my plans for the Innovation Lab. I spoke confidently about our roadmap, the potential for AI to transform user experiences, and the importance of building diverse teams. Other nominees congratulated me warmly, and I found myself in conversations with CEOs and founders I'd once only read about in tech blogs. The young woman, who'd been called nothing but a maid by her own mother, was now being celebrated by industry titans. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was electric with success and ambition. I networked naturally, discussing potential collaborations and sharing insights from our algorithm development. Several founders mentioned they'd followed my story and admired how I'd handled the public attacks with grace. "Your code spoke louder than their lies," one CEO told me. I was deep in conversation with a potential partner for our Microsoft lab when movement at the ballroom entrance caught my eye. My blood chilled as I recognized the figures entering, my mother in an outdated cocktail dress, Becky in something inappropriately flashy, and Clifford in what appeared to be a rented tuxedo. Somehow they'd obtained tickets to this exclusive event. They moved through the crowd like predators seeking prey, clearly looking for me. I watched my mother approach a group of investors, her voice carrying across the room as she began telling them about her daughter. My stomach turned as I heard her describing me as someone who needed help and guidance, painting herself as the supportive mother behind my success. Becky was already posing for photos, trying to insert herself into conversations with anyone who looked important. Clifford had cornered someone near the bar, his business cards already out. The contrast between their desperate social climbing and the genuine networking happening around them was stark. I was considering leaving to avoid a scene when Sebastian Chase approached. The billionaire tech mogul was legendary in our industry, having built 3 unicorn companies and now focusing on venture investments. "Bella Martinez," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I've been following NeuralSync's journey. Remarkable work on the algorithm. I actually tried to invest during your Series A, but James beat me to it." We fell into easy conversation about technical challenges and market opportunities. I'd almost forgotten about my family's presence until my mother's voice cut through the ambient conversation. She was standing just feet away, telling a group of guests that I was there to help with serving, just like old times. The words hung in the air like poison. My mother's proclamation that I was there to help serve created a vacuum of awkward silence in our corner of the ballroom. The investors she'd been addressing looked confused, their eyes moving between her and me in my designer gown. Sebastian Chase's expression shifted from warm interest to sharp attention. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being heard. "Did you just say that Bella Martinez, the CEO of NeuralSync AI and head of Microsoft's newest innovation lab, is here to serve drinks?" His tone suggested he was giving her a chance to correct an obvious misunderstanding. My mother, oblivious to the shifting dynamics, doubled down on her narrative. "Oh yes, Bella has always been helpful that way. Even with her little computer job, she knows her real place is taking care of family. We're so proud of how well she serves others." Becky materialized at her side phone, already out to capture content. "This is my sister," she announced, to no one in particular, preparing for a selfie. "We're celebrating her little achievement together as a family." Clifford joined them, immediately extending his hand to Sebastian. "Clifford Martinez," he said with false confidence. "I'm the strategic mind behind Bella's success. Perhaps we could discuss investment opportunities in my ventures." Sebastian's expression hardened into something between disgust and pity. He ignored Clifford's extended hand, completely turning instead to face me fully. "Ms. Martinez, I apologize for not reaching out sooner. When Microsoft announced your acquisition, I immediately recognized the innovation potential. Your algorithm's approach to predictive analysis is groundbreaking." He spoke louder than necessary, ensuring everyone nearby could hear. "The fact that you built NeuralSync from nothing to a $180 million exit in under 2 years is remarkable. You're exactly the kind of visionary leader the tech industry needs more of." The cognitive dissonance on my family's faces was almost comical. My mother's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. Becky lowered her phone, suddenly uncertain about the narrative she'd planned to spin. Clifford's business cards hung limply in his hand as he processed that this billionaire not only knew who I was, but was speaking about my achievements with genuine admiration. "There must be some confusion," my mother finally managed. "Bella is our daughter. She helps with family things. This computer stuff is just a hobby that got out of hand." "A hobby?" Sebastian's laugh was sharp. "Your daughter revolutionized predictive AI algorithms. Microsoft doesn't pay 9 figures for hobbies, Mrs. Martinez. They pay that for innovations that will shape the future of technology." He turned to address the growing crowd of interested onlookers. "I've reviewed the technical specifications of NeuralSync's algorithm. The elegance of the solution, the scalability, the practical applications. It's the work of a true innovator. I'm hoping to convince Bella to consider my fund for her next venture after her Microsoft obligation ends." The reverence in his voice when speaking about my work stood in stark contrast to my family's dismissive attitudes. Becky attempted damage control, her influencer instincts kicking in. She stepped forward with her brightest fake smile. "Of course we know about Bella's success. As her sister and best friend, I've been her biggest supporter." She moved toward Sebastian, clearly hoping for a photo opportunity. His response was withering. "I don't associate with people who tear down their own family members for social media views," he said coldly. "I've seen your TikTok videos, Ms. Martinez. Using lies about mental illness to attack a family member's reputation is not just cruel, it's dangerous. You should be ashamed." The public rejection from someone of his stature made Becky step back as if slapped. Clifford, never one to read a room, tried one more time. "Mr. Chase, I have several innovative ideas that could benefit from your expertise." He fumbled with his business cards, dropping several on the floor. As someone who mentored Bella in her early days, I understand the tech landscape intimately. Sebastian's security detail subtly moved closer, recognizing the desperate energy Clifford was emanating. "Young man," Sebastian said with finality, "I've built my career on recognizing talent and innovation. You possess neither. Your sister succeeded, despite your interference, not because of any contribution you made. Please stop embarrassing yourself and her." The mask my mother had worn for years finally cracked completely. The supportive parent persona she'd attempted dissolved into raw anger. "How dare you speak to my son that way?" she hissed at Sebastian. "We made Bella who she is. We gave her purpose, structure, a reason to work hard. Without us, she'd be nothing." Her voice rose with each word, drawing more attention. "She owes us everything, and she knows it. This whole CEO act is just her way of rebelling against the family that loves her." The ballroom had gone notably quiet, hundreds of successful people witnessing this spectacular display of narcissistic rage. I finally spoke, my voice calm but carrying across the space. "You're right about one thing, Mother. You did give me purpose." I stepped forward, no longer the scared girl who cooked their breakfasts. "Every time you called me your maid, every time Clifford stole from me, every time Becky mocked my ambitions, you gave me the purpose to prove that I was worth more than your narrow definitions. I succeeded not because of you, but despite you. And the only thing I owe you is this truth: I was never your servant. I was always meant for more, and you were too small-minded to see it." The announcement for the award ceremony interrupted the tense moment. As nominees were called to gather near the stage, Sebastian offered me his arm. "May I escort you?" he asked gently. I accepted, leaving my stunned family standing in a circle of their own making. As we walked away, I heard the security staff approaching them, clearly prepared to handle any disruption. The other nominees welcomed me warmly into their group, and I realized these were my people now. Entrepreneurs who understood that sometimes the biggest obstacle to success was the very people who claimed to love you most. The award ceremony proceeded smoothly, with each category celebrating innovation and leadership. When they announced the Young CEO of the Year category, my heart beat steadily. Whether I won or not, I'd already achieved more than anyone in my family thought possible. And the winner is Bella Martinez of NeuralSync AI, now Microsoft's Innovation Lab. The applause was thunderous as I walked to the stage. In my peripheral vision, I saw my family being quietly escorted out by security, their time at this pinnacle of success shorter than a coffee break. I accepted the Crystal Award, its weight solid and real in my hands. My acceptance speech came from the heart. Innovation doesn't happen in isolation. I began looking out at the sea of successful faces. It happens when we dare to believe in our vision, even when those closest to us can't see it. It happens when we choose to build rather than tear down, to create rather than destroy. Thank you to everyone who supported NeuralSync, to my incredible team who believed in the algorithm when it was just lines of code, and to Microsoft for recognizing its potential. This award belongs to everyone who's ever been told they weren't enough and chose to prove otherwise through their work. The standing ovation that followed felt like absolution for every moment of doubt I'd ever harbored. Later that evening, on the terrace overlooking the city lights, I stood alone with my thoughts. The award sat beside me on the stone railing, catching the ambient light. My phone buzzed with a call from James Chen. "Congratulations on the award," he said warmly. "But I'm calling about something bigger. I'm launching a new venture fund specifically for founders from non-traditional backgrounds. People who've overcome family trauma, systemic barriers, or personal adversity. I want you as a partner, not just an advisor. Your story, your success, it could inspire and enable others who think their circumstances define their limits." The offer was unexpected, but instantly appealing. After my Microsoft commitment, I could help other founders navigate the challenges of building something from nothing while dealing with personal sabotage. "I'm interested," I told James. "But I have one condition. We also fund mental health support for our founders. Success shouldn't require sacrificing your well-being to toxic relationships." He agreed immediately, understanding that true innovation required both professional support and personal healing. We made plans to discuss details once my Microsoft transition was complete. My phone contained hundreds of messages from industry colleagues, team members, and even competitors congratulating me on the award and the Microsoft success. I scrolled through them, feeling genuine warmth from this chosen family of professionals who celebrated my achievements without agenda. A video message from my team made me tear up. They'd gathered in our office to toast my success, each person sharing how working at NeuralSync had changed their career trajectory. These were the relationships that mattered, built on mutual respect and shared goals rather than blood obligation. I took an Uber home to my new penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. The space was minimalist but warm, decorated with pieces that brought me joy rather than serving anyone else's expectations. In my home office, 3 monitors displayed code and communications from my Microsoft team already working on the next phase of our innovation. I initiated a video call with key team members in different time zones, planning our Monday strategy session. One developer mentioned her daughter wanted to go into tech because of stories about me. Another shared that his parents finally understood his career choice after reading about our acquisition. As the calls ended and midnight approached, I made myself tea and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere in this city, my biological family was probably plotting their next attempt to claim credit for my success or extract value from my achievements. But they'd become background noise, no more significant than distant traffic. My real family consisted of mentors like James colleagues who pushed me to excel and team members who trusted my vision. Success hadn't just been the best revenge. It had been the pathway to finding where I truly belonged. The lesson I'd learned wasn't just about cutting toxic people from your life. It was about recognizing that family isn't defined by DNA, but by who shows up when you're building something from nothing. It's the investor who defends you in board meetings, the developer who stays late to perfect code, the security guard who smiles every morning as you enter the building where dreams become reality. Real family celebrates your victories without calculating what percentage they deserve. They support your growth without demanding you stay small enough to need them. My mother had been wrong about one fundamental thing. She said I'd always be nothing but their servant. But servants work for others' dreams, and I'd spent 3 years building my own. The girl who once made their breakfasts at dawn had become a woman who shaped technology's future. The maid they'd imagined had transformed into a CEO who created opportunities for others. And the family who tried to define my limits had simply proven that some cages are meant to be escaped, not repaired. In choosing myself over their expectations, I hadn't just found success. I'd found freedom, and that was worth more than any amount of money or recognition. Looking out at the city where I'd built my empire, I raised my tea mug in a solitary toast. To everyone who'd ever been called too ambitious, too difficult, too much by people who were too small to see their potential. To the dreamers working late nights on laptops in tiny apartments, believing in visions others couldn't understand. To the builders who chose creation over destruction even when destruction seemed justified. And to the truth I'd finally embraced, sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying connected to toxic family. Sometimes it's loving yourself enough to leave and build something better. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right then, using that proof to light the way for others, walking similar paths through darkness toward their own dawn. What toxic family dynamics have you overcome on your path to success? Share your story in the comments below. If this message resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of triumph over adversity. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their current circumstances don't define their future potential. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, you are not obligated to remain prisoner to anyone's limited vision of who you can become. Your dreams are valid, your ambitions are worthy, and your success story is waiting to be written by your own hands.